There are places in the forest where GPS fails, and footsteps seem to echo back wrong. Campers report waking up with their tents unzipped, even when no one else is nearby. Sometimes, it's just whispers in the dark. Other times, people vanish without a sound. And every now and then, someone returns, but never speaks about what they saw. It's not always wildlife that watches you out there. It's something else. Something older. We're taught to respect the forest too. Stay on marked trails. Pack out what we pack in. But there's a reason hikers talk about the silence. It's not peaceful. It's heavy. Too still. As if the trees themselves are listening. When sound disappears, fear grows louder. You start hearing what isn't there. And sometimes, you realize, it's been hearing you longer than you've noticed it. This isn't about monsters or myths. These are stories of hikers who lost hours, or even days, in places they've walked before. Trails that turned the wrong way, campsites that moved, shadows that didn't match your own. People who returned with no memory of what happened, or worse, with memories they begged others to forget. The forest doesn't need to trap you. It just makes you lose yourself. Some recall seeing lights through the trees, floating, pulsing, always just out of reach. Others report voices in languages they didn't understand. One man followed the sound of his wife crying, only to remember she died years ago. You don't question the forest while you're inside it. You only realize something's wrong when it's far too late to turn around. We listen to stories like these, not because we crave fear, but because they ring true in a way most horror doesn't. No jump scares, no loud bangs, just a creeping sense that something ancient is moving behind the trees, something without a name. And when the sun sets, you're not sure if it ever really rises again. These are 3 terrifying true forest horror stories of vanishing trails, whispers in the trees, and things that return in your place. If you've ever walked alone in the woods and felt watched, this is your warning. What you're about to hear isn't a campfire tale, it's a pattern, one that stretches farther than you think. Subscribe to Don't Watch Alone, and, if you dare, comment where you're watching from. That way, the forest knows where to listen next. David and his brother Lucas had explored dozens of forgotten trails together, but this one felt different from the start. They followed an unofficial map deep into Oregon's Umpqua National Forest, just a screenshot from a forum thread. The trees grew denser as they moved, the light dimming beneath thick branches. It was supposed to be a weekend hike, simple and quiet, but by the second mile, the path felt wrong, like something unseen was guiding them off course. Their first night in the forest was uneventful until David awoke around midnight. It wasn't a noise that stirred him, but the absence of one. No wind, no insects, no rustling leaves. The silence was suffocating. He noticed the tent zipper open an inch. Lucas was still asleep. David closed it, uneasy. He hadn't unzipped it. He hadn't forgotten. Something had moved it from the outside. He lay awake for hours, eyes fixed on the fabric, listening for breath. Morning light did little to ease the feeling. David kept quiet about the zipper. They packed up and continued, navigating narrow paths swallowed by trees. Hours passed in silence. Then Lucas stopped and pointed a single boot print in the moss. It wasn't theirs, just one, facing them. No trail before or after. It looked fresh. The forest didn't answer when they spoke. David felt watched. Lucas didn't smile. The silence returned, heavier now, and harder to ignore. Later, they reached a clearing with a crooked tree scarred across the trunk. David tied a red bandana to it, marking their route. They hiked on an hour, passed before the same tree appeared again, same scar. No bandana. That's impossible, Lucas muttered. They hadn't turned around. They hadn't doubled back. But the forest had brought them back. They didn't laugh. They didn't talk. David checked his compass. The needle twitched erratically. The trail wasn't looping. It was lying. They kept walking, but the landmarks repeated. a fallen log, a patch of mushrooms, a hollow stump. They began marking trees with rocks and broken twigs, but nothing stayed. By dusk, they settled in again. No fire. The forest felt aware, like it was waiting. Lucas whispered that he dreamt of being followed. David hadn't slept at all. He listened to the forest breathing slow, patient, deep. Something was near. Not angry, just curious. It didn't need to hurry. David woke suddenly, unsure why. Then he heard it breathing outside the tent. Not heavy, not animal, slow and deliberate. He held still, heart pounding. It stopped. Silence returned, thicker than before. He opened the flap. Nothing there, just woods. Lucas stirred, asking if he'd heard something. David said no, but he knew. Something had watched them, had stood just outside. It didn't need to be seen. It only needed them to know it was close. Closer than before. The trail vanished by morning. Every turn led to trees. They marked paths, shouted, circled, but ended back where they started. The forest folded in on itself. Their phones had no signal, no GPS. Lucas screamed into the trees. Nothing replied. They were alone, nor not. David found another footprint beside his. It didn't belong to them. It pointed forward, like something was walking ahead, not chasing, not lost, leading. The forest wasn't confused. It knew exactly what it was doing. Lucas stopped talking. David noticed he kept glancing over his shoulder. "Did you hear it?" he asked once. David nodded. A whisper his name, spoken soft and low, like someone close. Closer than possible. They walked faster. The shadows moved wrong. Too fast, too still. Trees twisted in unfamiliar ways. The path felt new and ancient. Something watched from behind bark and branch. They didn't run. They didn't dare. It wasn't hunting. It was waiting for what? They didn't want to know. They didn't sleep the next night. They sat back to back outside the tent, flashlights dying. The woods were still, too still. Then came the sound-light footsteps, just past the trees, pacing, stopping, resuming. No figure, just presence. David whispered, "It knows we're awake." Lucas didn't answer. He stared into the dark. At dawn, mist rolled in. The air lightened. A path appeared, real, solid, flat. They followed it, step by step, until gravel crunched beneath their boots once more. A ranger station stood at the end of the road. The ranger looked surprised. "You boys were gone 6 days," he said. But their watches showed 3. Their gear was dry, food untouched, bodies unhurt, but they were changed. Something had studied them, tested them, let them go. Maybe as a warning, maybe because it got what it wanted. The ranger said they'd gotten turned around. David didn't reply. Lucas looked at the trees and muttered, "It wasn't lost." Lucas moved to the city months later. He wouldn't talk about it. David tried calling, then stopped. The silence was easier. When he walked near trees, his chest tightened. He stopped hiking. He barely left town. He saw movement in the edges of mirrors, heard breathing when he slept, but there was never anyone there. The forest had followed him, in small pieces, whispers, shadows. Wait, it didn't need roots or bark, just memory. And David remembered everything. They told no one, not their families, not their friends, not even each other. After a while, the story stayed locked behind silence. No one would believe it. Telling it made it real again. So they avoided it. But the silence grew. It settled in their homes, under their skin. It waited. At night, David sometimes dreamed of red fabric in the trees. The bandana, still tied, still fluttering, still marking a path for someone else to follow. David once drove toward the forest again. He didn't plan to stop, just wanted to see if the road still existed. It did, but as he neared the trailhead, he felt that pressure return like eyes from every direction. The trees hadn't changed, but he had. He turned around before getting out, drove home in silence. The forest didn't need him back. It had already taken what it wanted. The forest waits, always quiet, listening, remembering who stepped too deep. Somewhere in the Umpqua woods, there's a trail not found on maps. It leads nowhere fast. Sometimes it loops. Sometimes it just disappears. But it always notices who walks it, who wanders too far, who doesn't listen to the silence. The forest doesn't trap you. It just waits. It learns your shape, your sound, and when the time is right, it decides whether to send you back or keep you forever. David left, but not all of him returned. Mark had never feared the forest before. It was part of him, its scent, its rhythms, its solitude. But now every branch seemed to bend toward him, every path narrowed behind. He pressed deeper into the woods, refusing to run. That's how people got lost. But the forest didn't feel vast anymore. It felt close, cramped, like it had rearranged itself just for him. And through the trees, his voice echoed again, closer, less human, like it had learned how to lie. He reached an old ranger station abandoned for years. The roof sagged, moss eating the walls. Mark stepped inside, flashlight trembling. Papers littered the floor, all blank, except one. It was a report. His name was on it. The date was that morning. The ink was fresh. Subject still within perimeter, it read. He turned. No one was there. But footsteps echoed outside, measured, familiar. He didn't call out. He didn't need to. The forest already knew he was there. Something scraped the outer wall. Not claws, fingernails. Long, slow drags across the wood. Mark stepped back from the window. A figure passed his shape, his jacket, his limp from an old knee injury. But the face, it wasn't finished. Smooth, skin stretched where eyes should be. The thing turned its head toward the window, as if sensing him. Then it spoke perfectly. Don't be afraid, I'm you. Mark bolted from the building. The thing didn't follow. It didn't need to. He ran until breath caught in his throat. Behind him, the forest snapped and moaned, not like branches breaking, but like something yawning. Trees seemed taller now, reaching toward the sky like arms. The air was thick, wrong. Mark's compass spun. His radio screeched once, then died. That voice came again, just ahead. This way, but it wasn't his anymore. It sounded older, deeper, like someone who had been wearing his voice for too long. It was rotting from the inside. He stumbled into a clearing he didn't remember. Perfect circle, where no underbrush grew. The air felt wrong, still. The trees leaned inward. In the center lay a mirror, an old camping mirror from his own pack. But he hadn't dropped it. He picked it up. His reflection blinked. Only his reflection. Mark dropped it, heart pounding. Leaves didn't rustle. Wind didn't blow. But something moved. Not behind him, inside him. The forest wasn't trying to find him, was trying to become him. Mark heard laughter, his laugh, but distant. It echoed from the trees in broken rhythms. Then came humming. His childhood melody, off-key and slow. Something mimicked his memories. It didn't need to see him anymore. It remembered him. He tried to retrace his steps, but the trail folded in on itself. Trees doubled. Sky dimmed. Then he saw it again as double, now walking toward him. But this time it had eyes. His eyes, and a mouth stretched into something unhuman. Mark turned and ran through trees that weren't where they used to be. Branches tore at his arms, but none left marks. It felt like running through paper made of breath. The voice followed. Why run? It asked, in perfect cadence. I'm already inside. Mark screamed, but no sound came. Not because he was afraid, but because something else used his voice first. The forest had claimed it, and now it was claiming the rest of him piece by piece. He found his old campsite, but it was wrong. The fire pit was fresh, warm. A kettle steamed, untouched. His notebook lay open, filled with writing he didn't remember. Pages of thoughts, memories, regrets written in his hand. A final line repeated, "I see you, I see you," over and over. He stepped back, tripping over his own pack. The radio inside clicked. Mark. It was his voice. No delay, no distortion. As if the forest was already using his mouth to call someone else. A storm rolled in without warning. Wind rushed through the trees, but none bent. Leaves didn't fall. Lightning flash, but shadows didn't shift. Mark backed into a tree. Its bark felt warm, wet. It pulsed. The forest had a heartbeat now. Something brushed past him silent, enormous, not grounded by feet. He didn't chase it. He knew what it was. His shape blurred, watching him with his own stolen gaze. He whispered, "What do you want?" The voice whispered back, "A home." Mark tried climbing a ridge to get above the tree line. Maybe then he could signal, orient, escape. But every slope led back down. The sun circled too fast, then slowed. He no longer trusted the sky. Then came music, his favorite song from childhood, playing on a nearby cassette player. But he hadn't used one in years. It lay beside a photo, his photo, a picture of him as a child, standing in this forest. He'd never taken that picture. He cried now. Not from fear but confusion. What was real? The memory of this place, or the place that made memories? He heard someone sobbing nearby, his own voice. A shadow crouched, rocking. It wore his uniform, his skin. His eyes met his own, and they were empty. The double whispered, "You're free now," then vanished into the trees. Mark stood alone. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe he was now the shadow, watching someone else walk into the forest unaware. The last time he tried his radio, it worked. A woman answered. "Ranger Base, go ahead." He hesitated. "It's Mark," he said. Silence. Then, Mark, who his voice cracked. "Mark Patterson." Static. Then, a final whisper, barely audible. "You're not Mark." The line went dead. That was the moment he knew he was no longer part of their world. The forest had taken more than his path. It had taken his identity. Now, he belonged to its memory. The forest doesn't kill, it collects. It gathers those who don't look back. Mark isn't gone. He walks the trails endlessly, mimicking footsteps, repeating names, whispering old songs. Hikers hear him sometimes just for a second. A voice they recognize but can't place. Sometimes it speaks warnings. Sometimes it lures. The forest learns through them. It grows with every soul it mimics, every story it steals. And with Mark, it had learned enough to make others believe the trees could talk. Now, when hikers go missing in that stretch of Alberta, the locals don't search. They listen. If they hear a name called in their own voice, they don't respond. If the wind hums something too familiar, they don't follow. Mark is still out there, wearing the face of whoever you fear most. So if you're walking alone, and you hear your own voice calling from behind a tree, don't answer. Don't turn around. And whatever you do, don't watch alone. Darren had hiked the woods behind his cabin dozens of times, but the new logging trail caught him off guard. It split off from a known path, freshly carved yet unsigned. Curious, he followed it. The trees here stood too close together, their trunks unnaturally straight. The farther he walked, the quieter it became. No birds, no wind, just his boots crunching leaves. He checked his map twice. The trail wasn't there. It had never been there, but now it was. The light dimmed too quickly. Afternoon shadows stretched far past their reach, and the air grew still, damp with a sour scent. Darren turned to head back, but the trail behind him was gone. Trees had shifted, grown. He couldn't tell. The space where he came from was now dense with undergrowth. He marked a tree with his knife, just in case, and pushed forward. Somewhere, twigs snapped. Not under his feet. Something was walking parallel to him. Slowly. He tried to speak to, call out, but the sound died before it left his throat. The pressure in the air was thick, like water. The trees seemed to lean in, listening. That's when he saw it. A small wooden sign nailed to a trunk. Do not step off. The words were burned in old. He hadn't stepped off anything. But looking down, he realized there was no trail beneath him anymore. Just bare soil. And his own footprints, circling. He sprinted. Not out of panic but instinct. The forest had changed. Every tree seemed to wear the same bark pattern. Too uniform, too deliberate. He reached a clearing, breath ragged, and stopped. In the center stood a hunting blind, old, rusted, with a torn canvas. He climbed in for better view, but what he saw made his stomach drop. Multiple trails, all leading inward. Not a single one leading out. He wasn't on a path. He was in a trap. The wind returned, but it didn't move the trees. Instead, it whispered low and layered, as if many mouths spoke at once. His name, not yelled, not even spoken, breathed. He clutched his hunting knife and backed out of the blind. The whispering stopped. Then, from behind the trees, came a click, like a camera shutter. He spun. Nothing. But now, hanging from a branch, was a photo. Black and white. A picture of him, from seconds ago. He didn't take it. No one else could have. He ripped the photo down and crushed it, but the moment it tore, a sharp pain bloomed in his chest, like static crawling under skin. He gasped and staggered. The whispering returned, louder now, closer, it said, almost. He turned and ran again, tearing through low branches. But the forest didn't resist. It moved with him, guiding, funneling, narrowing, until he reached another clearing. This one with a well, and the smell of rot. The stone well was ancient, choked with vines. Something dripped inside, slow and wet. Darren stepped closer, hypnotized. He peered over. Darkness stared back. Then a voice's own code up. Let me out. He stumbled back. The forest held its breath. Behind him, something shifted in the leaves. A reflection appeared in the water, his face, distorted and grinning. Its lips moved silently. Then came the whisper again. One must stay. He understood everything. Darren hurled a rock into the well. No sound followed. Not even a splash. The forest around him grew darker, not from clouds, but from something unseen, closing in. He sprinted again, ignoring direction. Branches clawed at his arms. Blood warmed his sleeves. The trees blurred, merging into each other. Then suddenly open space. A paved road. Civilization. He stumbled onto it, heart racing. But when he turned back, the trail was gone. No clearing, no well, just trees. Innocent, untouched. He made it home, somehow. Showered, locked the doors, tried to sleep, but the photo had returned, resting on his pillow. Same shot, same angle, except now, the background had changed. It wasn't the forest anymore, it was his bedroom. Darren searched the house, room by room. Nothing. But the pressure was back in the air, like something was holding its breath just behind him. The lights flickered, then, behind his mirror, a whisper. You came back wrong. He started seeing himself in strange places. Passing windows, reflections that didn't match. One time, in the TV screen, his reflection smiled before he did. He avoided mirrors after that, but they still showed him, uninvited. At night, he heard pacing above his ceiling. He lived on the top floor. When he checked the attic, he found footprints in the dust, his boots, his size, but backwards facing him, like something had been waiting on the other side of the wood. His phone rang. Unknown number. A voice answered before he spoke his voice. Where did you go? It asked. I'm still waiting. Then silence. The next day, he found a pair of boots outside his door identical to his. Same wear, Same mud pattern. Inside them, something pulsed, warm. He didn't touch them. That night, he dreamed of the well. This time, he was inside it, looking up, and someone, who looked exactly like him, dropped the stone. Darren doesn't speak much now. He avoids trails, parks, shadows, but sometimes while walking down a city street, he stops, tilts his head, listens, because in the rush of cars and voices, a different whisper breaks through. Still here. He glances behind trees that shouldn't be there, windows that shouldn't reflect, and sometimes, he sees himself watching, not angry, not threatening, just patient. The forest never needed to hold him, it just needed him to leave something behind. Now and then, hikers report finding a strange trail that leads nowhere. They hear clicking, see old photos nailed to trees, but when they go back the next day, the trail's gone. Locals say it appears for those the forest remembers, and when it does, it's not asking for you to enter. It's waiting to return what it took, or to make a trade. But what it leaves behind isn't always whole. It looks like you, but it's quieter. If you find a path in the woods that doesn't appear on any map, don't follow it, no matter how fresh it looks. No matter how curious you feel, the forest remembers footsteps. It collects echoes, and sometimes, it borrows faces. You might leave that trail, but not all of you will. So if you ever hear yourself whispering from behind, don't answer. Don't turn around. And whatever you do, don't watch alone. The forest hides more than animals and roots. It holds memories, footsteps that never left, whispers that never stopped. These weren't just unlucky hikers or lost campers. These were people marked by something ancient, something that waits behind bark and shadow. You won't find these trails on maps, but they might find you. And when they do, you'll think it was just curiosity. But the forest doesn't trap the curious. It invites the ones most likely not to return. Some say it's all psychological. Isolation plays tricks. Trees creak. Light bends. You imagine figures between branches. But what if the tricks weren't yours? What if the forest bends for you? Alters itself to keep you walking in circles, while something else follows your scent. These aren't just stories, they're warnings carved into bark, etched into lost journals, left behind in torn tents. If you ever hear your own name whispered from the trees, don't stop walking. Don't answer. These were 3 true forest horror stories. Stories of trails that shift, echoes that lie, and watchers that borrow your shape. Now, it's your turn. Have you ever felt watched in the woods? Heard something move when no one was there? If you've made it this far, you're braver than most. Subscribe to Don't Watch Alone, and, if you dare, comment where you're watching from, so we know where the forest should listen next.